Okay, I think we are broadcasting from here to points everywhere, so let's get started. Don't forget to silence your gadgets. Good morning. And when you're ready, Madam Clerk, let's have a roll call.
Bell.
Here.
Curran.
Here.
Freeling. Present. Harrison.
Here.
Hinkleman.
Here.
Majerick.
Here.
Ott.
Here.
Pittsburgh.
Here.
Walrath.
Here.
Werfel. Yarborough. Present. Elliott.
Here.
We have 12 present.
Okay, minutes from the 25th, because we had the night meeting. So who wants to move those
I'll make a
minutes?
motion that we approve the April 25th minutes.
Right. Moved by Freeling. Is there support? Supported by Bell. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Requisitions?
Yes, does anyone have any questions about the requisitions? Perfect, thank you. Just a reminder that finance committee is in here today.
Okay. Well, we'll move into the scheduled discussions. The first, Sheriff Height, are you ready?
I just want to thank you for the opportunity to us to do the award presentation in front of you. And the undersheriff to give a little background on it. And we have with us Deputy Justin Goff from Watervliet Township, who will be receiving the award. So I'd like Greg to give a little bit of history.
Thank you for your time. For a little background, on March 14th at about 11 minutes after 7 in the morning, our Watervliet Township Officer Justin Goff responded to a medical emergency of a female not breathing. He arrived within 2 minutes and was able to bring in the AED, which he quickly hooked up and shocked the victim, and then performed CPR until more advanced help got there. The individual, the female, was transported to the hospital, and we learned the next day from the doctor that if it hadn't been for his quick actions, hooking up the AED, shocking that heart back to a normal rhythm, getting CPR done, that he saved her life, and they expected her to make a full recovery.
So with that, we do have a life-saving award to be presented to Deputy Goff. And it states, this life-saving award is presented to you with honor and gratitude for your actions in the Township of Watervliet on March 14th, 2024, where you arrived on scene for medical emergency full arrest. Your rapid response administering one shock to the AED device and assisting with high-quality CPR was crucial in restoring a pulse and ultimately saving the life of Cami Hernandez. Obviously, thank Justin for his great work, but then also for you for allowing us to recognize that great work as well. So you don't have to say anything. Good. He's good. I'm good. Thank you.
I have a question. Have you met this lady after you saved your life? After she got out of the
We've tried. She's come down to the township hall several times, but I'm out on the street and we haven't been able to make that work yet.
So it's literally a life-changing event, and it's a life-saving.
Yep.
For her and her family.
Yep.
So, good on you.
Thank you.
And I think Annette wants.
Okay, I guess Annette wants photos. So.
Okay, and you're in the middle.
Justin, we understand if you have other places to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan and Jill, I said to Jill as I walked by, top that. So,
You know, you should always leave on a high note, so maybe we should just.
right,
Get
right.
out of here.
Right. Well, this is improving quality of life, so. So you're on.
Okay, perfect, thank you, Anna. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope that you recall, maybe in October of last fall, we came here with Southwest Michigan Planning Commission staff to talk about a change in the environmental laws in the state of Michigan that would alter the way the county or counties in the state prepare and manage what we call solid waste plans. These would be the plans that we've had for years that cite landfills and provide for the regulation of those landfills. The changes that came about, to refresh your memory, the changes that came about last year is that process of solid waste planning has now gone away, and counties are mandated to create something called a material management plan. This is intended to be a 20 or 30-year plan that deals not only with solid waste disposal, but recycling, waste diversion, a variety of different energy recapturing processes and so forth. It's a much more complex and involved process than the solid waste planning, which itself was pretty complicated. We went through the steps last fall of how this was supposed to work, what the timelines were, what the state was offering in terms of assistance, and what their expectations were under this new legislation. At that time, this board passed a resolution indicating their desire to work with our neighboring two counties, Cass and Van Buren, to create a multi-county plan, and also to have Southwest Michigan Planning Commission staff provide the administrative support to help put this plan together. So starting in January of this year, Jill and I have been meeting with our colleagues and representatives from the other two counties, as well as Planning Commission staff. And we are now at a point where we're ready to kind of make a handoff and transition this process away from county staff and into a new committee managed by Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. And those members of the board that serve in the Planning Commission are familiar with this because it's been discussed repeatedly at meetings. So I'm here to give you an update on what's been done and where we expect to go over the next 2 or 3 months to kind of start that transition and that handoff. So to kind of refresh everyone's memory or restate what's going on, there are a number of responsibilities involved with this new planning process. We have county approval agency, that'd be Berrien County, is required to adopt, implement, and enforce this new solid material management plan, pardon me. The county or counties also have to designate a planning agency to help in the process of creating this plan. That would be, in this case, the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. And then there is a subcommittee or a planning committee that has to be established pursuant to certain interlocal agreements. And that material management planning committee is the one that actually helps draft this plan with the assistance and supervision of the Planning Commission. And that planning committee is comprised of parties that are involved in the generating waste, recycling waste, managing landfills, and so forth, more professional entities that are involved in the actual physical process of waste generation and recycling. This is the timeline that we showed you last fall, and I'm just showing you where we are in this timeline now. The process was initiated on January 6th of this year. Resolutions were passed, and we were kind of ahead of the schedule here. We did it in the fall, but resolutions were passed by Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren to accept the responsibilities of creating this plan and to work together on a multi-county plan to appoint the Planning Commission as our designated planning agency. Since then, we've sent letters to the adjacent counties indicating our intention to work together. There's been some communication with even counties further out, like Kalamazoo County and I think St. Joe County and so forth. But the determination was made that the 3-county region is probably the appropriate size to stick with. We're not going to try to expand it any further. In that period of time, Jill and I have been meeting with the staff of the other counties, and we have drafted interlocal agreements that will provide, I'm going to go through it. It provides for the creation of this solid waste or this material management planning committee, and provides responsibilities, who's responsible for what. This is an interlocal agreement done under Public Act 7 of 1968, which is the Urban Cooperation Act. So we are at the point now where we're going to ask the counties in the coming weeks to approve this interlocal agreement so that we can start populating this planning committee in this over the course of the summer. And you can see here what will happen is the planning committee will be populated, members will be appointed to it. The planning commission will then prepare a work program for that planning committee, and then the race is on to get the work done in the next 3 years. But at that point, the county will have limited involvement in that process. At that point, it becomes a matter of the planning committee and the planning commission doing that. Okay, so I know I'm running through this really quickly, interrupt and ask questions if you have them, but here's where we are and where we expect to be in the next 6 weeks. We have until July 6th to get all this accomplished. We need the counties to approve the interlocal agreement. There is a cost reimbursement agreement we're proposing with Southwest Michigan Planning Committee. I'll discuss that in a little bit, but someone needs to pay them to do this work for us until the state steps in and picks up the tab for us, and that'll happen in a little bit. Like I said, we have until July 6th to get all this completed. We will have to have some press releases out there indicating that there's going to be an application process for members to serve on this Material Management Planning Committee. The applicants will have to be reviewed, recommended, and then approved by the 3 counties. And then there will be once this Material Management Planning Committee is created, then a work program has to be created that provides the direction to that planning committee. So all this stuff is going to happen sometime, before July 6th or shortly thereafter. All these steps will have to take place, but we're pretty much at the point of having the counties approve this interlocal agreement and start the process of getting the committee set up. So I'm going to introduce a resolution of finance next week, asking for approval of this interlocal agreement. We'll make sure that everyone has copies of it so you can read it prior to that. But in summary, this is what it does. It designates the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission as our agency, as our planning agency. It signs responsibilities that they're going to have to assist this Material Management Planning Committee in preparing a work program, and then over the next 3 years, and actually drafting this management plan. It provides for the process of appointment to members to the Material Management Planning Committee. It ascribes responsibilities for them to create a work program and then ultimately prepare the management plan and recommend it for approval to the counties. For the counties, provides that we have the responsibility to file our notice of intent with the state of Michigan and indicating that we're moving forward with this process, appoint the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission as our agency, reimburse the Planning Commission for costs and expenses, largely via state grant awards, which will come into us, and I'll get to that in the next slide. And then ultimately approve the material management plan sometime in the next 36 months. And then on an ongoing basis, administer that plan, which of course is the big question. No one knows exactly what that's going to entail right now. So I talked about it. The other thing that we were going to ask you for approval of in the coming weeks is a reimbursement agreement with the Planning Commission. To date, the Planning Commission has incurred about $16,000 in costs in helping us put this process together. They think it's going to cost them about $60,000 in total through the first phase of this. That is until they start getting that work program put together. The counties are in line to receive pretty considerable state funding to help with this process, but the way the legislation is written, that funding doesn't become available until fiscal year 2025. For reasons we don't understand, they basically said we're delaying the funding until like October 1st of this fall. So we got the Planning Commission out there doing all this work for us, incurring all these costs, and the concern is that they're going to eventually run into some kind of cash flow issue here because they're spending all this money on staff and not getting reimbursed right away. So we've drafted a reimbursement agreement that says the 3 counties will pay these costs up front to the Planning Commission, with the understanding that once the state funding becomes available, we can reimburse ourselves with that state funding. And that's been confirmed through Eagle that the funding will be allowable to reimburse costs up front. So this is a way of ensuring that the Planning Commission isn't running into some kind of cash problem by doing this work for us. And collectively amongst the group, the 3 counties have basically said, yeah, we're okay recommending this. We think, 20,000 apiece, we can pretty much pay for this and wait to get reimbursed until October if we have to. So that reimbursement agreement will be coming to you in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I run through it really quickly. I know it's a lot of information, but that's what's happened over the last 4 months. The long and short of it is, this is a long 3-year process. We're just at the beginning of it, but the effort right now is to set the thing up so that the counties have a formal agreement in place and have a process to get this planning committee put together so that we can then turn responsibilities over to this tri-county planning committee and let them help manage the creation of this plan so we don't have to do it directly. Any questions?
Julie?
This is more for Brian, so that's why I'm gonna look that way, Dan, just to want you to. As I mentioned last week, when we were at MAC and met with our legislators regarding, and we talked about this, and all of 5 of them were surprised that it wasn't being funded this year. Have we heard back from Crombie to hear that it's in the bill is concerning, that the 5 of them, none of them knew that, but.
We have not yet heard back.
Because they were gonna check into it.
I'll follow up with Mike today and I'll get a note out to the board on the status of this.
And at least an update before we get the resolution, and
Yeah.
since that's a week or 2 out.
Yep.
Yeah, I will tell you, we've been in contact with Eagle too. The only thing that would accelerate the funding is there would have to be a special appropriation passed by the legislature to pre-fund these costs. What we've been told is that is highly unlikely to occur before October 1st. Now, starting October 1st, all the counties are entitled to $60,000. That's a direct grant to every county in Michigan doing this. Counties that form a regional plan are entitled to an additional $10,000 on top of that. So that's $70,000 to Berrien County, 70 to Van Buren, 70 to Cass. In addition, we're entitled to 50 cents per capita up to $300,000. So based on the 3-county population, we will be receiving $300,000. So in total, the 3 counties will have, I mean, what does that up to? It's $510,000 to perform this work over the next 36 months, which that's going to be more than enough to get the plan put together. The big unknown is, once the plan is put together, what funding mechanism will be in place to assist counties in implementing this plan? And that's the question right now. that no one
Hey,
is
Dan,
answering.
can you expand on that? And I guess to the group, I'm gonna ask you to speculate, and I understand it's pure speculation, but what does life look like after the planning process? What fundamental changes do we anticipate seeing?
All right, so this is the way it works right now. The county solid waste plan cites the landfills and provides for their capacity, and that's it. The regulation of those landfills is under the purview of Eagle. They have the enforcement and regulation responsibilities of landfills. We don't. We just cite them and provide for the capacity. That's it. Under this new plan, the way that we're being told this is going to work is that counties will have enforcement responsibilities as to the material management plan. That is, if the material management plan says, for example, we want 20% of all solid waste in this county or the tri-county region diverted for recycling purposes, we will probably have to inspect that and enforce that. And no one really knows what that's going to look like and how it's going to be paid for. I mean, Thaddeus and I have been joking about, we're going to have to hire like the trash cops to come and like literally inspect this stuff. But that could be not too far from the truth. And as it stands right now, no one has been able to provide an explanation of what the funding mechanisms for those enforcement responsibilities will be. We just don't know.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Question?
Well, just to expand on this, aside from essentially what goes into landfills, do you anticipate that ultimately after the plan, after the adoption process, do you anticipate that it could go as far as like environmental regulations that will be pulled into that arena?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you get into 2 different levels of government here. I suspect that some of the enforcement of this plan is probably going to have to be done under county ordinances. Some of it will probably be or continue to be done under the Michigan Environmental Protection Act and Eagle's review and enforcement of that. So I mean, we just simply don't know. But I'd be surprised if we didn't have to pass some kind of ordinances regulating the diversion and recycling of solid waste in the county. And it's gonna be complicated. And that, one of the reasons we're doing a 3-county plan is because we know that individually, our 3 counties don't have the administrative capacity, or in some cases, the physical assets to do this work. We're gonna have to rely on Van Buren to have like a waste generation process. We're gonna have to rely on CAS to do like energy recapture. So it's complicated, and we just unfortunately don't have all the answers right now.
Terry?
My question is just a refresher. What is the plan for the number that we need to reach for recycling? It is a
think-
huge amount.
I'm loath to state something I could be wrong about, but I believe it was 40%.
I thought it
the
was
goal.
something like that.
And it's not
it
a
was
mandate,
quick.
it's not a mandate, it's a goal established. Like you have to show how you can reach that goal. But by comparison, we know that our neighboring states are essentially achieving a 40 to 50% recycling rate. So Michigan is way behind in this regard, and it's probably time to catch up, but it's gonna be a lot of work on the local communities to do this.
Shokwe?
So and I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this question, but this is a new thing that counties are gonna have to figure out how they're gonna do and how they're gonna implement. And it seems like Eagle is giving that to the counties. The state is giving it to the counties. Is that correct?
That's right.
So is there any current funding sources or maybe funding sources on the horizon that will help us with this in perpetuity, things that already exist that we would now be eligible for after this is kind of worked out?
Well, the short answer is, I don't know. Right now, Berrien County, for example, collects a portion of tipping fees from the regulated landfills. So I think when you go through the budget, you see this. I mean, most of Jill's environmental recycling programs that Parks runs is paid for out of the tipping fees from the landfills. That is one source of funds that we want to preserve in this new plan. We want to make sure that the counties are receiving, tipping fees off the landfills. Other sources of funding, though, we just don't know. I mean, there could be a fee attached to recycled materials. We don't know how to do it, but right now, the state has not provided any guidance on what those funding mechanisms could look like. I think it's gonna largely be up to us to figure out legally what we can do.
Interesting. Thank you.
Dan, just back up, and this is essentially the question that comes right at the beginning of this. Does the county have the option to essentially take no action?
We do. We've already initiated the process. We probably could back out at this point, but there is the option to turn this over to Eagle and say, you write the plan for us. The problem there is that we would still have to enforce whatever plan they wrote. So the idea of doing this on our own is at least we can craft a plan in a manner that we know we can enforce. But I think that I'm not sure that any county has adopted the process to let Eagle write the plan for them, because you don't know what you're going to be responsible for enforcing at that point.
John?
Can the county take credit for the businesses that are recycling if it doesn't go through the landfill? Metal scrap, tires, the things that you've got multitude of businesses that are already recycling, but it's not coming through the landfill. They're doing it personally. Can the county take credit for that?
I think that's probably going to be an element of this plan, is find some way of actually measuring that and quantifying it, and including that as part of the plan.
It's probably the only way that you can get to 40%.
Yeah, and it's actually a good question, because I don't want to give the impression that this is just a reworking of the landfill process. I mean, this is intended to be much more expansive than that. So I'm sure we're going to be looking at, how do we quantify and measure the amount of private recycling that's occurring? How do we quantify and measure the amount of, say, things like yard waste that's not being dumped in the landfill, that kind of stuff. And when you start thinking about that, you can see why this is going to be a challenging process for any county to do, because how do you go out and actually inspect any of this and make a determination of it? That's the joke we had about the trash police, is like someone's going to have to actually go inspect this stuff and figure it out.
Terry?
I just quickly looked up, just so it's public. Current rate of recycling in the state of Michigan is 21%. The recommendation is 30% by 2025 and 45% by 2030.
Okay, there you
So
go. Yeah.
I just wanted to state the numbers so we all had them in our head.
Yes, sir.
One last question. What role will our municipalities play in this process? I know it's going to be county run, but as you're saying, there's a lot of smaller components that are going to have to be built in.
Well, yeah, again, I mean, I'm just speculating here because, you know, it's really gonna be up to the planning committee to put this together for the counties. But I imagine, you know, in a simple sense, we know a number of municipalities that have user fees for recycling. I mean, I have a bin out in my front yard that has all my materials in it. So I think things like that, we'll be looking at what are local communities doing in terms of their trash collection millages. Can they promote more recycling through the use of those millages, that kind of stuff?
Another question. I have one. Under the Urban Cooperation Act, I know we've done other interlocal agreements. And on occasion, we will make sure we bake in an opt-out clause.
Yes,
Is there going to be such?
there is. In the interlocal agreement, there is a termination clause in it.
Okay,
Remember, however, that if we get into this and decide that we want to terminate, you know, our participation in the interlocal, we would then be in a race to figure out how to do a plan on our own. So, I mean, there's a timing issue. Once, I don't want to mislead anyone. If the board approves this interlocal agreement, anticipate that you're in. I mean, we will have a way out if we need to get out, but the timing is such that we'll probably have to see it through to the end.
yeah, I remember when we were doing, gosh, even going back to Act 641 plans. And those were 5-year plans. Cass County's plan was, our plan is to dump everything in Berrien County. Because they didn't have a landfill.
That's, yep.
I don't know if they do now.
No, they
I think
don't.
they do.
Yeah.
So, and typically in these regional deals, we shoulder a disproportionate share of the administrative costs.
Yeah.
Just food for thought as you guys are getting a little deeper into this.
Well, two things there. The first is the interlocal agreement establishes the material management planning committee and ascribes their responsibilities and then the county's responsibilities relative to that committee. The material management plan that comes out of that committee will have to include things like appropriate cost share and administrative fee components. That's not in the existing interlocal. This just establishes that committee. That's it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I wasn't here the last time the solid waste plan was approved, but I do know from talking to people that are involved in it, one of the sticking points was the county has all the landfills. Cass Van Buren Waste is coming into Berrien County, therefore Berrien County is entitled to tipping fees off those landfills, not the 2 neighboring counties. And so the devil's in the details in that sense. And I think that when we get into this material management plan, there's going to have to be a reflection of who has the largest administrative burden.
And if it's a board that is populated by population, so to speak, pro rata, about 60% of the vote should be Berrien County. I mean, if it's a third, that's really not fair.
So the way it works is that the material management planning committee, which is drafting the plan, the legislation provides specific people that have to be on this, representatives of certain types.
Sure.
Okay. And then the counties are given also direct independent appointments where they can appoint the county commissioner, representative of the municipality, and so on and so forth. Okay. Right now, it's equal representation, the way we set it up. The problem of trying to do it by population is that we don't know if we're going to get, let's say we need 3 members of waste generating industries. The likelihood is they're going to come from Berrien County because we don't know who we're going to get from the other 2 counties. If we have to have representatives of a waste recapturing facility, it's probably going to come from Van Buren because they're the ones that have it. So, I mean, we were kind of constrained by the specific legislative requirements of having certain representatives on this committee. But I will circulate the interlocal agreement to the board so you can take a look at it for yourself and see what we're talking about having on.
All right. Been down this road before
Okay.
with these interlocals. And I'm loath to shoulder a disproportionate share of the burden financially and administratively without having a proportionate voting power along with it.
Understood.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. Anyone else? Jill, do you have anything you wanted to share? Okay.
All right.
Did he do all right? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you both. Do you have anything before we
sir.
go to public comments? All right, public comments. Anyone wish to be heard on anything? Okay, we'll adjourn about 8 minutes early, restroom breaks and all that before committees.
Stay in here.
Oh, that's right. Finance stays here.